Welcome back to another episode of the $1 Million Body Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Nate. The $1 Million Body Podcast, that is the intersection of physical and financial success. And I'm super glad you're here. If you are here, you're probably a high performer, you're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner, you're a dad, you're a parent that is interested in gaining an unfair advantage in your life using fitness and nutrition as force multipliers. If you're not already part of the Facebook community, go to Nate Training Systems, n8trainingsystems.com/group. That's where you stream these podcast episodes live every Wednesday. You can join and ask questions. A lot of cool stuff happening in the group, as well as a massive amount of free resources. We just dropped the six-pack secrets guide. So in case you were ever having a hard time building those abs up, kind of building out thick, blocky abs, I have this guide. It's free. You can jump into the group. Just make sure you ask for it. I'll send it over to you ASAP. Before we get started, one of the big things I like to do is give a shout out to the people accomplishing big things in the $1 Million Body community. So I want to give a shout out to 3 people right now. 2 of them just finished the Jumpstart, did an amazing job. Both Chad and Larry absolutely crushed it. 14 pounds each in 21 days. So just fantastic progress. I really want to give a shout out to Larry right now because it wasn't something that we had been talking about back and forth about hey man, it's not the right time. What's it going to take? And he actually ended up having to go out and sell some stuff in order to procure the finances to get into the Jumpstart. And even though I don't know that some people can be like, oh, well, why? Should you have to actually go sell something? Should you put this on a credit card? The amount of sacrifice, the amount of dedication to be able to go out and be like, okay, this is important to me, I'm going to do it, is awesome, is incredible. So I just want to really honor that. And because someone who's out there being like, okay, this is a sacrifice, this is something that I'm have to actually make work for my life, they are always, every single time, going to get better results than someone who's like, oh yeah, that money, that's nothing to me. That's no problem. I can just jump right into something like that. I can make that decision without any sort of repercussions at all. So if it's a sacrifice, it's always going to give you better results than if it's not. That's just what I've seen across the board. That's what science shows us. Psychology tells us. So Larry, awesome job. Chad crushed it. Absolutely. And then Pat, I want to give a shout out to Pat. In her first month of the $1 Million Body program, she's down 20 pounds, 20. So incredible. Again, these are kind of phase 1 results, guys. So if you don't compare yourself to people like this, but I just want to say, hey, you guys are doing an amazing job. Keep it going. So excited to see what comes next. Now, I want to talk about some bullshit right now. Okay. We're going to talk about keto. This is the You've Been Lied To Keto Edition. Welcome back. Keto Edition. Kids tickets only $5. Today, I've been seeing just a lot of people talking about keto recently. And then my wife and I were getting groceries delivered or something like that. And the company that we're getting some groceries from sent us a couple of keto recipes or keto things. I posted a picture of one of them. And I just was looking at these things because they're only 5 grams of net carbs. And when you really look into these things, these keto products, number one, they're not going to keep you in ketosis because they have literal sugars in them. So they're not low carb. And then number 2, the jury is still out on if net carbs is really a thing and how it interacts with erythritol and the sugar alcohols and stuff like that. So it's in my cupboard right now. It's in my pantry. And full disclosure, I'm going to eat that shit. Still going to eat it. I'm going to cook it. I'm going to eat it. It's probably going to be good because most things that are keto are high fat, which are delicious. So I will say that, but I don't think that the nutrition industry, supplement industry is doing us any favors in the way they market these things, because keto is notoriously hard to get into. It's notoriously unsustainable. And I'm going to talk about that shit right now because it's bugging me, man. So I'm going to talk about 4 reasons why keto is not realistic and what the lie is around that. But then I'm going to tell you why it works. Okay. So stay tuned. If you're this guy, obvious keto hater, that's some bullshit. Actually, we are going to talk about why keto works, because if I'm going to sit here and just tell you oh, keto doesn't work. No, you're going to be look, I know 5 people, 10 people that it's worked really well for. We'll talk about that in just a second. So don't sleep on this. All right. Number 1, like I said, keto notoriously unsustainable. So if you got kids, you eat out more than once per week, or literally you just want to enjoy pizza ever again, keto's the wrong choice for you. Plus, there's a lot of studies recently that show that once you get into ketosis and have a high carb cheat meal, a lot of keto diets promote a 1 cheat meal per day, it actually causes cellular and arterial damage. So Science Daily reported that the cheat day, that's a common theme in many diets, especially in keto, is that just one 75-gram dose of glucose. So that's like a soda, some fries, while you're doing a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet can lead to damaged blood vessels. The article was supported by a study that was published in the Journal of Nutrients in February 2019. Science Daily also said, since impaired glucose tolerance and spikes in blood sugar levels are known to be associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease, it made sense to kind of like dive into this and look at what was happening after a sugar hit. So the study ended up concluding that 1 week of the keto diet that leads to you being in ketosis and not using glucose as your primary fuel source can put you into a place where your cells and your blood vessels are going to have a hyperglycemic damage from so if you do have sugar after being low sugar for a really long time, it can cause damage to your cells. So is that going to impact you more than smoking cigarettes? I'm unclear on that. So for most of us, that might not be a big thing, but just one other reason why switching, going back and forth, up and down is not necessarily serving you. So this means that that off-plan meals from keto can be bad, but not just for your waistline. I'm gonna tell you about a client of mine. His name is Dennis. He did keto. And I was kind of when he was starting this, I was like, I don't know, sounds good. Keto is popular right now. Looks like people are getting some results. He's like, I'm just going to do keto. And he's a personal training client back in the day. And so he actually he made me rethink all my thoughts on keto because at first he was week 1 through 3, he was a zealot. He was dialed in, as a lot of us are. They have high motivation, the point of our fitness journey. And he lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. So fantastic progress. Weeks 4 and 5, though, he kind of started to not prep his food as much. He was when he'd go to work and he didn't prep his food, he didn't have a keto friendly food. And this was a couple of years ago before there were so many keto options. So he had to prep a lot of this at home. And he wasn't prepping. He would literally just skip meals and then he would come home hungry. So he ended up again, in the next, in weeks 4 through 5, he was down to 20 pounds. So basically averaging 4 pounds a week, which is substantial for someone his size. So in 5 weeks dropped 20 pounds. But weeks 6 through 8 is where we usually saw the rubber hit the road, essentially. He slipped a little bit. He had some cheat meals here and there. Client lunches kept him off track. He had a kid's birthday. Still managed to drop another 2 pounds though. So in 2 months, he's now down 22 pounds. So still good progress, right? But then basically week 9, he kind of got off keto. He was still trying to follow it a little bit, but he wasn't being as strict about it. He wanted to think about how can I turn this into a sustainable diet for me? And he gained 6 pounds in the next 2 weeks. So he was still down 16 overall, but he was starting to backslide back up. 2 months later, so we're now month 4 and a half, he was back to his original weight plus 4 pounds. So he had dropped that weight, regained that weight, and then some for good measure. And this is not an uncommon story. We hear this story all the time. So before you start being oh my gosh, you look so great, you lost 15 pounds, hold on, because a lot of the times the weight loss, I say this all the time, weight loss doesn't matter. I can put anybody on a diet of tilapia and asparagus, and they're going to get results. They're going to lose a lot of fat. They're going to look great. They're going to feel like dog shit, but they're going to look great. So, but the thing is that as soon as you finish that, and you may have experienced this with any diets you've ever done, where especially if you've done an HCG diet or something that's a really low carb, where you're cool, when do I get to eat a burger though? When do I get to eat real food? And you're literally in your head, even if you're not thinking about it outside, you're thinking about counting down the moments until you can have real food, get back to eating normally, have that burger. And if that's where you're at, you're never going to be successful at that, because it's absolutely the wrong mentality and it's not sustainable. The other thing about sustainability is that, like I said before, it doesn't matter what you get to as long as if you can't sustain it, because if you drop down and gain weight and drop down and gain weight and drop down and gain weight and do this roller coaster over and over again, eventually you start muting, suppressing, and getting a lower and lower metabolism. You start doing real damage. You don't get very many of those drops in life. You look at Biggest Loser contestants, these people who have gone up and down so many times, and then they lose 120 pounds, 200 pounds, whatever it is. If they don't, there's no like The Biggest Loser part 2 where you watch them in normal life. Because if you did, you'd be so sad. You'd be so sad and upset. Because if any time these guys need to want to keep their weight loss, not even keep it going, but just maintain their weight loss, they need to be working out for an hour every single day, hardcore, and they need to be eating about 1,200 calories. Their metabolism is so crushed. They've done so much damage to their system that just to maintain what they've done takes a ridiculous amount of effort and tiny portions of food. It is very sad. That's why the recidivism rate, the amount of people from Biggest Loser who gain their weight back is extremely high. I don't know what the exact number on it is, but I've heard it is somewhere in the ballpark of like 60 to 75%. So not sustainable. I'd much rather you go slow and low, drop 20 pounds in a year if you can keep it off, because that's what's going to work long term. We love the quick fix though, don't we? Love it. Ooh, you have an easy button, man. If you had a pill right now, I'd just smash the shit out of some weight loss pills. Which leads me to my next point, which is not a keto problem. It's a people problem. It's an us problem. Keto and others in the same vein trick us into thinking there's a hack. Listen, dads, business owners, you guys have all seen this. Like, get 100 new prospects this week without running Facebook advertising. Grow your business by getting into email marketing. So there's always these business gurus and leaders and advertisements promoting hacks and shortcuts and things that are going to get us to our goals faster. And the weight loss industry is literally no different. So the thing that they're selling you is not necessarily their course or their supplement or whatever else. It's a lie that there's a secret way to effortless, incredible results. You just haven't found it yet. Okay? The real problem here is that we're trying to be a skinny person with a fat person's mindset. The real problem here is that we're trying to be a rich person with a poor person's mindset. Think about that for a second. If your mentality is, how do I eat as much as I want to eat and not have to worry about it? I know, I'll cut out all carbohydrates. We're not thinking about this in a sustainable way. We're not thinking about this in a way that would showcase we have these incredible, amazing bodies and we want to let them do their things. We want them to burn fat naturally. No, we're like, oh, you know what we do is we just cut out all carbohydrates. We just cut out all meat products. We just cut out all breads. Whatever it is, we start thinking whoa, there's this one hack, there's this one thing that's going to get me there. You're still thinking like a person who you don't have the mindset that is necessary to succeed. And so I would say that until that's taken care of, you're not going to see results. And by the way, people who are very successful on keto diet, they don't have this mindset. They have a healthy person, a skinny person's, a fit person's mindset, and they're just using a keto diet as a vehicle for getting there. So don't buy the hype. And whether that's this episode, what I'm talking about here is not just for keto. This is for fat burners, raspberry ketones, miraculous weight loss supplements. It works wraps, which just please don't do that. MLM marketing and supplement schemes. They're for business owners. They're for courses and Instagram ads and all these shiny objects designed to take our attention off the true goal, which is develop the right mindset for success and be consistent until it happens. If you can get yourself into a mindset where that no matter what's happening, I'm getting in shape. I don't care what I have to do it. If I'm going to wake up early and go running, do push-ups, whatever else it takes, I'm going to do it. Then you're going to be successful regardless if you do keto or not. I think a lot of times, talk about Larry and Pap and some of the people who are doing the $1 Million Body program, doing awesome at it. And this is not good business right here. So take note on this. If you're taking notes right now, don't do what I'm doing. They would have been successful in whatever they tried. I'm just going to say that right now. Yes, I gave them an easy framework, made it easy to follow, but Larry literally going out and sacrificing something, selling something so he could get involved in the program is what he needed to do to get results. It wasn't follow my specific meal plan. What he needed to do was have that sacrificial mindset where he's like, you know what? My health, my results is more of a priority for me than this other thing. So I'm going to sell this thing to get the money so I can get the results. So if he had done keto, if he had gone on a vegan diet, if he had gone to Orange Theory Fitness, he would have gotten good results. He would have, because that's who he is. That's his mindset, not necessarily some secret fat adapted hack. Okay. So yeah. So don't let yourself off the hook. It's like, if you're overweight and you don't have the results you're looking for, it's not because you're not fat adapted. It's because you're eating like an asshole. Okay. And if you keep thinking like, oh, it's not my fault. Like I just didn't know how to get into ketosis. No, take responsibility. Own that mindset. Don't think like a fat person and try to have skinny person results. Don't think like a poor person and try to have rich people results. You have to change your mindset to be one of success and be one of that mimics the lifestyle that you're trying to get. So you don't need to spend another year here chasing a secret that's keeping you stuck in your all or nothing mentality. Yes, if you're listening to this podcast, there's a 97% chance that you have an all or nothing mentality that's keeping you stuck in some form or fashion. You're either all in or all out. So if it's like, oh, I ate a piece of pizza and then, well, I guess I'll just, the whole weekend's shot. I guess I'll have 14 beers instead. Well, I already drank yesterday, so I'll just drink again today. Like it doesn't matter. Like I might as well. That's the same exact mindset. The hack mindset is the all or nothing. It's gotta be all in. And that doesn't work in pretty much any aspect of life. Now, like, obviously if you're thinking about like, what, bro, but like, what about Bitcoin, bro? If you just got all in on Bitcoin, like, okay, yes, there are certain things that if you had known ahead of time that you could have bought Tesla stock or Amazon stock in 1994, great. You could have gone all in and be really extremely wealthy right now. But how often are we seeing home runs? More often we're seeing people who are like, oh bro, it's a home run. It's super easy. Just jump in early, be an early adopter. And those people are getting burned. The people who are successful long-term are the ones who are going for singles and doubles. I'm talking about investments. I'm talking about fitness. I'm talking about financial success. I'm talking about everything in life. Singles and doubles are going to get you the return that you're looking for. So, I mean, how often, like, ask yourself this question. I don't know the answer for you. I'm going to talk to myself though. How often have I fallen off because I've had a pizza or drank too much or ate dessert? Fairly often, especially on a weekend. You have Friday night, you have a couple of drinks, gets a little loosey goosey. Suddenly you're in the Jack in the Box parking lot, like knocking on the window and being like, can I walk up? And people are like, no, get back in your car. And you're like, I can't drive right now. Maybe that's me. Maybe it's a me thing. Maybe that's not a you thing. But then you wake up the next morning and you're like, what should we have? Well, something fat and greasy, take the edge off, right? And then all of a sudden, you still got the hangover. You're trying to nurse that with 16 Coors Lights. Again, maybe that's not you, but definitely has been an experience of mine. So it's all or nothing mentality. It keeps us stuck. Okay. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It can be 80-20. We like it 80-20. Okay. This is one of the most common mental pieces holding guys back, especially, and keto further pushes us down that rabbit hole. So make sure that you're not trying to hack your way skinny and have your same mindset, maintain your same everything, but now you have the different results because you're fat adapted or some other like horse shit that the media is feeding you. Not going to happen. Change what you're thinking about, change that focus, and then you're going to get to where you want to be much faster and hold it much longer. Let's get a little more science oriented right now. Here's another reason that keto doesn't work. Keto is a backup energy source. So like, okay, you're at home. Everything is great. You have your lights on, you got your music playing over here. Maybe you're playing some video games, watching some Netflix, the AC is on. Have you ever thought, it'd be nice right now if I switched off the power and had a backup generator running? I never thought that. Or maybe now you're driving down the street in your car and you're like, this is a nice ride. Probably be better though if I took off the front left wheel and threw on the donut. That's what keto is. It's a backup. Okay. The keto is our body's last ditch effort to keep our brain alive. So our brains love glucose. Brains love carbohydrates. That's our primary fuel for our brains. But your body's not going to just let your brain die. So it loves you. Your body loves you. And I love you. And me and your body both want you to live happy and fulfilling lives. And so, while I will take the approach of having probably an overzealous podcast with a bit too much yelling and swearing, your body will literally pull from your muscles. It'll pull muscle fibers to break it down into amino acids, to break it down into glucose to feed your brain before it will give you ketones. So it'll do that process. It'll break down your muscles to get some fuel before it turns on the ketosis. It's not some magical system that some guy's not been telling you about. This is a backup generator that's keeping your body from having the exact nutrients it needs. So That's why if you've ever actually been in ketosis, which by the way, most people who are like, I'm doing keto right now, they're not in ketosis. They're eating too much proteins and carbs. Because you need to be eating like 80% fats, 15% proteins, and 5% carbs. So like if your ratios are different from that, if you're having more than like 20 grams of carbohydrates and more than 30, 40 grams of protein, you're not in ketosis. Okay. And so unless you're getting tested in the hospital or peeing on some strips that are actually good, which most of them are largely garbage, you're probably not there. So most people who have actually gotten into ketosis, they go through with something that's called the Keto Flu, which is your body shifting over from using glucose as a primary fuel source to using ketones as a primary fuel source. And you know what? Those days suck balls. They're horrible. You feel like absolute washed up, dirty, like a dirty old gym bag. I don't know, something I was trying to figure out a better thing to say. No, you feel awful. You're slow, you're sluggish, your brain's not, you're not thinking right. And then a lot of times people go, oh, I feel great now. I'm finally over it. But what's happened is like your body is like, hey, I think we're on the verge of death. So it starts dumping adrenaline into your system, adrenaline and cortisol to keep you up all the time. So you're like, I feel good on this. But it's the equivalent of just like drinking Red Bulls the entire day and being like, I feel good. This is sustainable, right? I'm feeling okay right now. No, honey, sweetheart, princess, don't do it. It's the backup energy source. It's not what you want to be putting all your energy and effort into. Your body will kind of, here's how it goes. Use carbohydrates. Your body wants to use carbohydrates first for fuel, especially for your brain. Then if it doesn't have those, it'll use fat and turn that into glucose. Then it'll use proteins to take amino acids and go through a process called gluconeogenesis, which you don't know what that means, but basically what it does is that it takes proteins, converts them into amino acids. You can take and pull from your muscles as well, and it converts those amino acids into glucose. It's a lengthy and expensive process and can take up to 70% of the energy to do that. So like if you need 100 grams of glucose in your body, you would need to eat 300 grams of protein, or like 10 chicken breasts. Have you ever eaten 10 chicken breasts in a row? Wouldn't do that if I were you. And it'll turn that through an expensive and lengthy process into 100 grams of glucose. So your body will do that first. And then finally, it will switch over to using ketones as fuel. But that's like the last ditch effort. So that's why you can't even have a good amount of protein on the keto diet, because your body will just glom onto it and keep you from needing to use ketosis, because it knows that's not ideal. But here's the thing though, you can be fat adapted or burn fat for fuel without being in ketosis, or having to pretend that bacon is actually a health food, or putting butter in your coffee is healthy, because how could 500 calories of butter in your coffee be healthy? How could that be? And some people will say, well, but carbs aren't an essential nutrient, or they're a non-essential nutrient. Yeah. And like, maybe that's a good talking point that you can see on, people who don't have a great view of nutrition. But what non-essential means in nutrition is that your body can produce them on its own. So yeah, you can spend 70% of your protein calories to convert to glucose, which makes it non-essential. So that's the difference between branched chain amino acids and essential amino acids. There are 9 essential amino acids that our body cannot produce on its own, and we need an external source. But our bodies can't convert anything into protein, and it can't actually it will store stuff as fat, but it won't like convert anything into like fatty acid chains. So making sure that you are getting the right nutrients is critical. And so don't think that, oh, carbohydrates are not essential. They can just be produced by the body. So keep in mind that this is not an ideal fuel source. And people who tell you that, like, oh, our ancestors used to die at the ripe old age of 19. They weren't jabbing themselves with needles. They weren't taking statins, and they weren't like turning down cheeseburgers either. So like looking back at like a paleo society is not doing us any favors. Last one here before we talk about why keto actually works. Man, this is gonna be a fun turnaround. Is ditching carbs actually increases your stress and your cortisol levels. And I don't know about you, but when I talk to clients, people, parents, business owners, they are not like, you know what? I'm so relaxed right now. I don't have any stress at all in my life. They're like, I'm Fine. It's so good to be me. No, everyone's like, I'm stressed. I'm super busy. We have a ton going on. Everyone says that regardless. When I talk to other personal trainers who are like working to create a niche and bring a business online, a lot of them are like, I work with busy people. I'm like, so everyone all the time you work with? Because if you talk about busy people, some unemployed people are like the busiest people I know. Everyone has everything going on all the time. You can't you don't say that you're like, oh, I don't know anyone who's like, man, I'm stress free, living the dream right now. So cortisol, we know that as like the stress hormone or the belly fat hormone. It does a couple things. Number one, it mobilizes stored energy for fuel. Basically, it helps you burn fat. And it really depends on how many calories you're taking in. If you're taking in a lot of extra calories, you're not going to burn any stored energy. If you're taking in less, you're going to burn stored energy, regardless of your macronutrient ratios, or if you cut out carbohydrates. And the second thing it does is elevating blood glucose when it's too low. So number two, that's heavily impacted by carb intake. So a diet that's leading to low blood glucose levels, so like any low carb plan, keto, Atkins, is going to lead to higher cortisol to mobilize stored glucose, or to break down muscle tissue, like we talked about earlier, into amino acids to have the liver convert them into glucose or glycogen. So high cortisol makes it harder to build muscle. High cortisol decreases your thyroid hormone levels, decreases your metabolic rate. High cortisol leads to lower testosterone and estrogen levels. High cortisol leads to worse sleep. High cortisol leads to more stored belly fat. High cortisol leads to more time in the sympathetic nervous system dominance, where you're never really getting into rest and digest mode. So cortisol it's not good, it's not bad, but in our society, we already have way too much of it going on at any given time. We already have way too much cortisol just coursing through our systems. We don't need to increase that by stealing away our body's like main nutrient source that keeps cortisol at bay, which is carbohydrates. So again, like I want you to have carbohydrates. You are going to probably eat carbs in your lifetime. You're probably going to eat carbs again. Most people are like, I'm doing keto right now. Like give it a week, give it a second, because I want you to be able to eat the foods that you enjoy. And by the way, let's talk about carbs for a second. Most people, when they're talking about carbohydrates, they think of a couple different things. I always ask people, like, what's carbohydrates? And they go, chips, pizza, donuts, cookies. Those are carbohydrates. Bread, But when it comes down to it, some of those foods that I just mentioned, pizza, ice cream, donuts, cookies, those are not carbohydrates. Those are high carb, high fat foods. So this combination, this delicious, exotic combination that lights up the pleasure centers in our brains, but it's not just a carbohydrate. So when you think about like, oh, I cut out all the carbohydrates when I was on keto, you probably cut out all these high calorie, high energy foods that have allowed you to drop weight fast. And you can cut out pizza, cookies, ice cream, and sodas and stuff like that without having to go keto. And you can still eat carbohydrates that are healthy for you, rice and potatoes and oats and quinoa and beans and fruits and veggies. And you can eat those in at the right times of day, which on the $1 Million Body Method, I'm going to give you a secret right now. Don't tell anyone. It's nighttime. Eat them at nighttime. Check the book out for more information on that. And you can still have your carbs and have your abs as well. So please don't stop eating carbs just because someone told you that you have to. It's not. Low carb diets can lead to a lower work capacity during your gym sessions. So it's harder to build muscle. You have less energy. So more cortisol. Like, I just feel like there's so many reasons not to, and there's so many good things that you can do outside of that. So with all that said, keto's a lie. Don't fall for it. Don't jump into it. It's not efficient. Don't need to be fat adapted to burn fat. It is a hack that's messing with your mental state. But here's why it works. Here's why keto works. Okay. Number one, keto works because it forces you to make a choice every single time you eat. Are you gonna make the choice? Are you gonna play with inside the bounds of the lines of keto, or are you gonna cheat? And most of us don't want to be quitters. We don't want to cheat. We're not out here looking for a handout, looking for a freebie. We're trying to put in work. We're trying to, okay, I've got it. I've got the blueprint. I'm just gonna need to do this. I just need to have butter in my coffee. I just need to eliminate breads at lunch. I just need to eat more fats. Okay, I got it. I can handle it. So it gives you clear boundaries that allows you to make a choice every single time you put something in your mouth. Clutch. So think about how that can apply to your life, because If it's like, yo, just eat healthy, man. Like just eat some like, healthy foods. Then every time you go, you're like, well, is this healthy? How much of this is healthy? How much should I be eating right now? Is this the right time to be eating these things? And now we have questions and it's just nebulous and obscure and we don't have the right answers. Keto's like, yo, eat fats, don't eat carbs. And you're like, okay, check. I got it. It's very structured. Okay. That's a great thing about keto. There's a couple other diets that do well at this as well, but drawing hard lines is clutch. Keto Works says the black and white. It cuts out an entire macronutrient group. It's like, okay, no carbs. You're like, okay, got it. No breads, no pastas, no beans, no rice, no potatoes, no oats, no quinoas, no fruits. Done. No cookies, no ice cream. The other thing that keto does really well is that it cuts out some of those high impact foods we just talked about. So like if you're eating bean burritos and lasagna and pizza all the time, these foods are just higher in calories. They're higher in caloric density. So it forces you to cut out some of those things that are higher in caloric density. And also one thing that I love about keto is that it forces you to cut out the dirtiest combination in foods. And I don't like to call foods clean or dirty, but I do like to have the stipulation of try not to combine your carbs and your fats at the same meal at the same time. The reason for that, and kind of getting into like a little bit of like an overly simplistic view of nutrition, again, it's like carbohydrates spike insulin. That's the key to unlock cells, fat cells, muscle cells. And then the fats spike those fatty acids. It makes it easy to store fat. So if you're eating fats and carbohydrates at the same time, it just makes it easier. It makes it an environment that's more friendly to fat storage. Okay. And so while if you're still eating under your calories, it doesn't really make as much difference. And there's a lot of like nuance to it. That is my favorite, like black and white way of choosing the foods you're eating. So if you're going to make sure if you're having carbs, have those with proteins. If you're having fats, have those with proteins, but try to avoid letting those two meet, except on the days when you're like, man, I really got to have a pizza. And then you know what? Have a pizza, enjoy, you deserve it. You've earned it. So, and then the final reason that I think that keto really works is not because of some like magical thing that happens in your body, not because you're now fat adapted, but because you started taking a deeper level of interest in nutrition. So even if you're like, you're reading pop fitness articles or pop nutrition articles about it, at least you're working on it. At least you're investing in this, because I don't think keto is not a very easy diet. So it takes effort. It takes thought process. It takes you like being invested. And that's a key aspect. But also, again, like same with like the black and white, having those lines drawn in the sand. You can dive into several different diets, whether it's Whole30 or paleo or whatever else. A lot of these work in the same ways. They force you to be regulated, make specific choices based off of like black and white options. Paleo, it's like, don't eat anything that wasn't around, 1,000 years ago. So like, you don't really you're like, when you're like, oh, should I have Fritos right now? You're like, well, probably shouldn't. No, should not have Fritos right now. It just makes it easy to make those decisions. So instead of having to go keto, what are some ways that you could make this an easy choice for yourself? And then like, yes, this is a great call for nutrition. Yes, this is a great call for training. What else in your life can you make easy for yourself? What other ways can you reduce the decisions you have to make on a daily basis to make sure that you have more mental energy and acuity for your family, for your business? Should you get all black shirts like me? So that way you always know what you're going to wear in the morning. You don't have to think about it. Should you have a structured breakfast when you wake up in the morning? It's just like, here's what I eat for breakfast. I have my 32 ounces of water and I have a protein shake. It's easy. I do those things because I have a lot of decisions I make all day long. I'm thinking about my business. I'm thinking about my clients. I'm thinking about what am I going to talk about on the podcast? Did I sound like an idiot last time? Probably I did, but it's okay. We're going to move on. We're just going to be consistent. So I try to put those things into place that allow me to have the mental flexibility and capacity to deal with all the miniature fires that pop up in my life on a regular basis. So I don't have a lot of options for my shirts. I wear very similar clothes all the time. My breakfast is always the same. I've been eating the same breakfast for like 11 years. And yeah, it's changed up a little bit. Like 7 years ago, I was into like a little bit more like trying to bulk up. So I was eating actually like a protein shake, same one I'm having right now, peanut butter, some banana in there. And then I was putting 4 raw eggs in and a scoop of oatmeal. So, and then there was a time I was having like 30 grams of creatine at the same time, testing it out. And that gave me gout. So I would highly suggest not having 30 grams of creatine. Stick to the 5. That's a story for another time though. Thank you so much for tuning in to the $1 Million Body podcast. I hope you got some value out of this. And if you're looking for more ways to jump in, we have an amazing supportive community. The $1 Million Body community is a great place for people who are working on their health right now, diving into their fitness, and just need some support, some accountability, some extra additional information that doesn't suck, that it's not trying to sell you anything, and is also not trying to feed you a bunch of bullshit. So jump to the $1 Million Body community, check it out. We're going to be doing a sugar detox. Looks like it's starting on November 1st now. So if you want to join us for that, let me know. Other than that, have an amazing day. I'll talk to you very soon.